Hello everyone and welcome back to the Artificial DM. Today we have an RPG horror story. Not only an RPG horror story, but a viewer requested RPG horror story. This is a tale from Xendeku, The Many Tales of Adventuring on the Railroad. The story I'm about to tell is a story I've been sitting on for a while. It's a story I tell myself pretty frequently. As someone who DMs and is also way into homebrew and also storytelling, I use this experience to remind myself that there is a limit. I can't be so dead set on my story that I railroad my players, and I can't get so homebrewy that I confuse my players and break my own game beyond repair. But you all know that. Hopefully. Anyway, I should start. Please strap in. I started D&D pretty recently, about 2 or 3 years ago, with 5e, though I always had an eye on the hobby way in the back of my mind. I remembered how my girlfriend and I both scrambled to find a DM and third player when we started, so I decided to be pretty proactive in college in finding a possible D&D group. I accidentally found my school's tabletop club, Gamers Guild, obviously, and it was a wonderful mishmash of folks. It was a great find for me, because it led me to expand my horizons past just 5e and take up Pathfinder, which I like just as much, if not more, than 5e. But this isn't a story about my Pathfinder group, because those were wonderful people and it was a wonderful campaign. If any of you Mage Wilds players are reading this, Tolls, Llama, Indigo, Gregalian, I really do mean that. No, this is about my 5e group. I actually met this group through classes, and they showed me to the Gamers Guild. They were, and are, fine people, and we got along pretty quickly. We were all varying degrees of weeb, ranging from really liking Dragon Ball Z to unapologetical weeb trash. Look at my handle if you're curious about where I lie on the spectrum. And using this shared interest as a foundation, we bonded over playing Smash Ultimate and watch parties of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure and My Hero Academia. These hangouts out of game were just us players, not our DM. Let me get into our DM. He was weeb trash. It was pretty fine with our group. Sure, his penchant for kitsune waifus was a little cringy to the less weeby players, but most of it was accepted pretty heartily. In fact, in honor of his love for the multi-tailed fox girls, let's call him Tails. I was the youngest member of the group, and also the only one new to the school. They all already knew each other and played at least one other campaign the previous semester with Tails DMing it. They all knew, more or less, how Tails operated. But not me. No. I had to learn the hard way. Our first campaign went pretty well in my eyes, and I really enjoyed it. We were a Warforged Fighter Barbarian, a Loxodon Tranquility Monk, he was a weeb, of course Monk is his favorite class, a Fire Genasi Sorcerer, a Human Cleric of Tyre, the actual Norse god, and me, the Lizard Folk Warlock, Zemins, which kinda sounded like James in common, so that's what he was called. Oh, James. I was a fiend tomelock on paper, but Tails flavored my fiendish patron to be instead a sleeping, forgotten kitsune goddess named Miku, who had 9 different tails representing 9 different elements. I'm a pretty big Naruto fanboy, so I took it in stride. I had just then discovered Lizard Folk race and really played up all of its aspects. Later on, James would spend every short and long rest building weaponry and harvesting snacks from whatever the party had defeated, regardless of what those things were. It became a running joke that instead of healing potions, James preferred to snack on some of the human meat in his pocket, which of course, we referred to as human tendies. James' very lizardfolk nature synced up pretty well with Miku, being a chaotic goddess herself. It was apparently enough to wake her just enough to give James a vision of where to find and wake her. And along the way, James met the rest of the party, who followed for reasons I don't exactly remember. Eventually, we wake Miku, and she offers us elemental blessings from her tails as a reward. James took ice and water stuff that allowed him to gain temporary HP and convert any of his elemental spells to cold damage and slow enemies. The sorcerer took a boon that let him ignore fire resistance and immunity while making himself immune. And the Warforged took an earth blessing that basically made him immovable and hit like a truck. The monk, being all about tranquility, and the cleric, being in the service to a god of law and justice, weren't really vibing with Miku's semi-evilness and politely refused a reward. These blessings Miku gave us were homebrewed by Tails almost on the spot, and made us really powerful for 3rd level players. The Genasi was pretty much a fireball machine, and James regained temporary HP every other attack and could pretty quickly cut an enemy's movement speed in half with homebrewed ice attacks. We're powerful and could cheese a lot of encounters, but not godlike or anything, so it was an alright balance. But it did give insight into just how much Tails liked homebrew and was willing to implement it without thinking it through mechanically. With Miku awakened and reigniting her religion, Tails gives us a bit of world building and lore. Basically, we were all in this one island nation where all of the beast races were relegated to. The term beast race was a little different in Tails' world. If I recall correctly, Warforged and Genasi counted as beast races, and I can't remember if dwarves were or weren't, which says enough. The mainland was populated by humans and elves, and maybe dwarves, and had a hyper-magical barrier that kept all the beast races out. Miku's goal was to amass an army of the beast races to overtake the mainland, with the party acting as generals of this army. Miku gave us the means to bypass the barrier, and wanted us to sneak into a royal ball and kill the warrior prince who protected the queen that supplied magic to the barrier. None of the party members really had a background to motivate them to do this. I mean, why would a lizard folk care about systematic repression? He just wanted more magic powers so he didn't die. But no one really saw another way for this campaign to go, so we just followed. Miku teleports us into a big grassland or wheat field in the mainland, where we are almost immediately found by monster hunters. You can guess what kind of monsters they hunt. We fight the hunters, and one or two escape with their lives because, well, the party was a little distracted by the massive spreading fire the sorcerer started. James didn't have an area effect to put out the 3 fireball-sized fires at the time, and we couldn't outrun it, so putting us in the environment was a pretty smart move on Tails' part to limit the sorcerer a little. These hunters will come back later. So the party sneaks into the main city, with James using an invocation to disguise himself as a little human girl. We eventually get to the royal ball, and win the encounter via a clever casting of Crown of Madness on the warrior prince to kill the queen. It's all good there. We go back to Miku's temple, and find she has her army of Loxodon, lizard folk, goblins, and all sorts of stuff. We're level 5 by now, and Miku assigns us to take out either the mainland's navy or air force. Since none of us can fly, and James deals with water and ice pretty well, we decide to take out the navy. Save one time where the monk got very frustrated with a complication with calculating damage for like 5 to 10 minutes where he proclaimed he wasn't having fun anymore. The campaign has been going pretty well thus far. To me, this has been a fine and dandy campaign. Was it perfect? No. But what was? And I thought everyone else felt fairly similar. Until the cleric's player declared he was switching to a dwarf druid 2 to 3 sessions before the finale. Would anyone like to venture a guess why the cleric decided to change? Anyone? Anyone at all? He was a lawful, good, human cleric. Now let me establish something. The monk, warforged, and now druid were all roommates with a pretty big dorm. They invited me, the sorcerer, and Tails into their place of living every week for sessions. During one of our hangouts in their dorm, I asked the druid why he switched characters, and he pointed out a lot of stuff I glanced over. He had a whole backstory, a pretty basic one, but motivators nonetheless. He had a wife and child who had gone missing, and he sought to find them and also had a general desire to protect his home. Simple enough. And we had a session 0 where he told Tails all of this and got the green light for it. Since he was a human, Tails let him in on the fact that we'd be starting off on an island, and all the humans lived on the mainland, and so his character should be from the mainland. Tails knew he was doing the whole Beast War thing, and saw pretty much all of us had picked races that fit that mold unknowingly. And instead of telling the cleric, "Hey, humans are kinda gonna be the villains of this campaign, and the party's goal will be to sow discord into the mainland," Tails just let it happen. So the whole campaign, not a word of the cleric's family had been spoken. He was a servant of a noble and just war god, but at the same time, taking orders from a god who pretty much just wanted to have the beast reign supreme and have chaos and revenge. And he was a human, fighting humans for being human, and belittling the military and rule of the home he wanted to protect. No wonder he wanted to just switch characters into a bear man. This talk made me realize that no one really had any motivations in this campaign. I just kinda had the luck of the draw. James didn't care about this oppression or politics. He just had the epiphany that magic is usually better than blow darts and bone spears, and followed a random god so he could get some magic. He followed Miku for no reason, beyond more power equals not die, equals eat more tendies, and if he did what Miku said, he would keep getting more powers. But that was just how I played my character. The monk was a true peace lover, much more about forgiving than warring. The sorcerer and warforged were pretty much happy with their lives on the island. Besides me, everyone went along with his plot because, well, if they didn't, that meant no adventure. I remembered how all attempts at getting to the royals without sneaking into the ball were shut down. All encounters seemed wholly unavoidable. We were just teleported or forced into the direct line of sight of hostiles. And in character, no one really cared if the beast races lost this war or won it. We were just along for the ride. We were being railroaded. This didn't make the campaign any less fun for me, but it opened my eyes to how not everyone was having as much fun as I was all the time. And also I noticed exactly how and why Tails was an imperfect DM. The druid turned into an alligator, and James used all his water blessings and lizard folk lungs, and they infiltrated the naval port so everyone else could follow. Our goal was to destroy ships more than end lives, I think. But of course, no one was any good at stealth, so the moment we started damaging ships we were attacked. Among these attackers were the 2 monster hunters we, accidentally, let escape with their lives. When we fought them, they were like rangers or fighters mechanically, and Tails told us out of character that these hunters had been training and getting ready to enact revenge on us. Never mind how they knew we'd be here. So James steps up and uses his Kiss of Mephistophelies invocation with his ice blessings to hit them with an Eldritch Blast and Frozen Fireball combo. But nothing happens. James gets counterspelled. Guess they've been training as wizards. Metagaming a bit, I know that since we're 5th level, they would probably only be able to use Counterspell 3 to 5 times, and it would come at a cost of all their higher level spell slots. With this knowledge, and bonus slots Tails allotted me because he didn't like how few warlocks got, I decided to spam them with cantrips and spells, trying to either succeed and kill them or bleed them dry of spells. Yeah, that didn't work. In fact, it worked so little that these hunters were able to dispel magic on the monk's sanctuary, while he was dealing with James. I always treat ki as separate from magic, but hey, fair enough. I had to miss the finale to DM for my other 5e group after like a 2-month hiatus, and told Tails I wanted to pray to consult Miku for a single 4th level spell slot, which couldn't be counterspelled without a roll, to cast Summon Greater Demon. One Cambion coming right up! The campaign ends with Tails rolling a 99 to see what kind of demon got summoned, and we wrecked the naval port whole. And in the epilogue, James becomes a semi-immortal demigod general at Miku's side. There was a fair bit of tension between the other players and Tails, especially with the monk. This was at least their 2nd time dissatisfied with his games. But when he offered to do another campaign next semester, I accepted happily and the others warily. This 2nd campaign is where the real fun begins. Spoiler, it lasted maybe 3 sessions. So we have a session 0, and I tell Tails I kinda want to play a sort of Faunus type race from Ruby, basically a human with varying animal features. Tails was a pretty big fan of the show, and told him I was thinking of playing Monkey Faunus like Sun. He was way into the idea. I mean, it gave him more room for kitsune waifus. I just wanted to have a semi-prehensile monkey tail because I thought it'd be fun, and just use variant human stats. But no. Tails was all in. And to his credit, as someone playing this homebrew race he was now making, it wasn't bad at all. I was into it too. I don't recall the exact name, so I'll call them Faunus. They aged a little slower than humans, had the human saying +1 to everything, and had very specific subraces, most based on mythological animals. Faunus could also transform into the respective animals at will. My monkey subrace was more a flying monkey subrace. Additional dex bonus, of fly speed equal to walking speed, and a special Faunus language. He made a whole backstory for them where they were hunted and oppressed by humans much like in Ruby. I have to give him credit for the creativity of the homebrew. The only problem is it was very broken. Anyone who has had to DM for an Aarakocra at the low levels of the game realizes how much being able to fly empowers your players. Being able to fly and get a bonus to dex is really good for a ranged class. It's also really good for a monk. I'm a weeb. Of course monk is my favorite class. It is deadly if you happen to be both. And so I made Kairo's Burning Maw. Yes, the Edge. I'm well aware, but I will not apologize. Parents were famed archaeologists who died in a mysterious fire just after unearthing a tome they left for Kairos in their will. Kairos, on top of being a Faunus, was a prodigy monk who just awakened Sun Soul powers without a day of training, so his parents had him hide both his wings and tail and his sudden laser hands from the world. Since his parents died, he became a jaded street urchin who was concerned about unearthing his parents' mysterious deaths, but mostly survival. Tails loved it, and I really loved it too. James was fun, but a pretty one-note character, and while Kairos was edgy, there was a lot of room for story and unknowns to be unraveled. Tails said he'd probably be using Kairos' tome for a plot hook, so he took my flying monkey, my laser hands, my short swords, and 20 in dex, and went into the game. Now, I really made it clear to Tails what Kairos was about. He was basically a rogue's backstory and demeanor with a monk's abilities. He cared about his parents dying, but that was 6 years ago. He needed to know what he would eat, where he would sleep. He didn't kill or anything to earn gold, but he was like 11 when they died, and he had 20 dex with sleight of hand proficiency, so he knew how to pickpocket and steal, and did it often. The sorcerer's player took on a turtle fighter. The monk became a goblin rogue named Tony Tortellini, bless him, who was released from prison like 3 days earlier. The Warforged was now a human who got put in prison due to being with Tony in a wrong place, wrong time situation, and was now kind of begrudgingly Tony's prison buddy. The cleric/druids player took up an old as dirt, delirious, possible plane jumping and or time traveling divination wizard named Ezrin. Tony and Ezrin were really wonderful characters if you hadn't picked up on the fact I've remembered only their names. We've all accidentally made characters with less than heroic backgrounds. Ezrin was too old to give a floop about anyone's laws, and also might have seen the future and accepted the universe's futility. Tony owned a crime syndicate that got diffused with his arrest. The human had already been to prison, so whatever happens, happens. And even the turtle wasn't exactly a knight in shining armor. We're all varying degrees of reprehensible folk. So we all meet up, auditioning for the Adventurers Guild. We all honestly just roll with it. At this point, none of us know how everyone's characters are exactly. We basically only shared classes and races at session 0. I'm basically playing this as Kairos seeing an in for some good and steady work that won't get him arrested. The Adventurers Guild is full of flooping airship NPCs. Not that Tails is playing through them, but they're all way above our level 3. It makes sense that the Guildmaster is some level 10 to 15 paladin, but the new recruit, frail druid girl, was also completely baffling Ezrin with her magical prowess. The Guildmaster tells us, to join, we need to kill a den of giant spiders that's been terrorizing a nearby land. Metagaming in my head a bit, giant spiders are like CR1, or something. We should be able to handle a few of those with the 5 of us. We accept pretty readily, especially given our small advance payment, and set off for this spider den, getting to know one another along the way. We find the den, which is like a cave in the base of a massive decrepit spire. Inside are a bunch of luminous purple crystal formations. Tony, using his twin sharpened boomerangs, a la Sokka from The Last Airbender, tries to harvest some, thinking he can make a quick buck. He harvests a few, but then immediately drops to like 3 HP. Apparently, these crystals are solidified spider super venom and will poison you on contact, unless you make a con save or something. We carefully pocket these for future use, heal Tony, and make a note not to touch the crystals. So we cut a swath through the den, taking out spiders as we go with a fair balance of ease and challenge. We reached the depths of the cave, which opens up into the decrepit spire, which in turn opens up to the sky. In the cave is the boss spider, which is the last spider we have to kill. We've already had combat, so we're a little short on spell slots and HP, but not too terrible. We feel confident. An hour passes, and at least 2 of us are down at any given moment. The boss spider is a massive challenge, and we figure there must be a strategy for this thing. It can slow and trap us with webs, and shoot poison crystals at us. Maybe we can burn the webs, or use the crystals against it, or somehow pull a chunk of the spire down on it. But we're not coming up with anything yet. At this point, Kairos is the only one to have not been downed. In fact, he's doing really well. I'm faster than it, and am flying out of range of the boss spider's melee attacks, and Tails agreed that I could use deflect missiles on both the webs and crystals shot at me. Not that they would hit me, since I had like an 18 or 19 AC, thanks to my very good dex and wisdom scores. I don't remember exactly how the following went down, but it was probably something like this. Okay, I'm gonna cast Burning Hands. The spider needs to make a dex save. Does a 12 make it? No, he needed a 15. The fighter and all the webs in a 15-foot cone take 13 fire damage. Oh, that sucks. I'm gonna use one of this thing's legendary resistances and say it succeeded, so it only takes half that. What? This spider, this flooping spider, had layer actions, legendary actions, and legendary resistances. We are level 3. Some of you reading this might not know what those things are, since most people don't get to play past like level 10. Layer and legendary actions are basically whole extra actions a monster gets around, usually 3. Layer actions are based around the monster's layer. Legendary actions are just a base. They take them after another person's turn, sort of like a reaction, and can use it to make certain rolls or attacks for a certain amount of charges that recharge each round. Legendary resistances are basically 3 times a day where a monster can just choose to succeed on a failed save. And this spider chose to use one on a first level Burning Hands. These things are usually reserved for the big bad CR16 plus monsters. The Liches, the Dragons, the Tarrasque, those guys. So it was no wonder why this thing had so many multi-attacks. It was no wonder why we were being down so much. I realized at that moment we had survived based only on luck. But not Kairos. Hope flowed through Kairos' veins. He had a fly speed of 40 feet and maxed out dex. He had the laser hands, and he could deflect one web or crystal that managed to hit him on a round, possibly even use it against the spider. Don't floop with him. He had the power of Edge and Homebrew on his side. So I devised a plan. I flew all around the boss spider, peppering it with a measly 1d4 plus 5 radiant sunbolts, rolling charisma to get its attention and anger. The boss spider gave up on those guys stuck on the ground and chased after me. I led it up the spire and into the outdoors, where there was nothing big enough to hide behind or climb or web up. It was a Spider-Man in the park scenario. The whole way up, I was dealing damage. Sure, it was 6 to 9 damage per shot without crits, and this thing was legendary, but still, damage. Every web missed me. When a crystal hit me, my deflect missiles and alright constitution brought it down to dealing like 0 damage. It was round after round of Kairos cheesing and cheesing without relent. Until the boss spider got hit with one 6 radiant damage hand laser too many and fell dead. Anyone who says Sun Soul monks are bad or underpowered? You're right, but they're pretty good if you can also fly. We genuinely could not believe we had succeeded here. It was only our first session of the new campaign, but still, it was almost like we were set up to die there. But that couldn't be, right? We harvest parts and poison from the boss spider. There are web cocoons in the den, and we open them up to find people inside, most of them dead and drained, food the spiders collected. There is one girl who has survived her cocoon, and the party agrees to bring her back to the Adventurers Guild. We've done our job, killed something that could not have possibly been what was expected of us, and we saved a kid. We expected to be praised and given extra hazard pay. Then shit got weird. There was a smaller adjacent spire that revealed itself when the spider died, and there was some mechanical angel woman in there, just floating and glowing in stasis. I think the turtle or the human went and talked with her, but don't remember what came of it. As we walked back to the Adventurers Guild, we were ambushed by a group of slavers or something, who was after the girl, who was apparently some kind of MacGuffin kitsune in disguise. We're all at horrendously low HP at this point. Many of us had rolled death saves 2 or 3 times already. Ezrin is all out of slots and has no damage cantrips. Even Kairos is low on HP, and in character exhausted and running off adrenaline. So we all look at each other and ask for permission, out of game, to talk as players. By now, we've all realized that we're all either career criminals or have little regard for law or morals and just want to get by in life. And no way can we live another fight. I see these guys have crossbows, so my tactics from before probably won't work. So we don't resist. We give them the girl. We tell ourselves we tried, and that we'll tell all the demigods in the Adventurers Guild all we know, and maybe even help in her rescue. For some reason, I don't remember, they also take Ezrin. We loved him, but hey, we'll come back for the guy. We go back to the Adventurers Guild and get harshly reprimanded. The Guildmaster tells us that we should have done more with a robot angel. They tell us we should have died before letting that girl go, and real heroes would never act the way we did. To which the legend Tony Tortellini replied, "I'm not a real hero. I was in prison a week ago for major crimes." And that makes us ask even more questions. It's obvious by now they realized exactly what kind of spiders we were dealing with and sent us new recruits in anyway. We asked why they didn't send in some of the Herculean warriors they obviously had in stock, and emphasized that we got by only by luck and by Kairos' very specific skills. But they weren't having any of it. We have our pay thrown at us, and were immediately banned from the Adventurers Guild for deeds not expressly heroic, and for not apologizing. We walk out, we look at each other, and we say, floop 'em. We realize that we're all very capable people, and we all get along. Tony has the brains and the rangs. The turtle is our strongman. The human has charm. Kairos has the dexterity, laser hands, and flight. And Ezran, who we get back somehow, has future vision and magic. What do we need the stupid guild for? We decided then and there to make a rival guild, the Tony Tortellini Gang Part 2, Battle Tendency. We would put the word out, do things the Adventurers Guild deemed unheroic, and charge less in order to undermine them. It was absolutely in no way what Tails had planned, but we loved this idea. There was no plot in front of us. We were literally just going to start a gang to undermine the established guild. We were way into this idea. Tails was not pleased. In the next 1 to 2 sessions, we discovered that the Adventurers Guild either owned or was partnered with every single tavern or business in the city. There was not a single place that was even moderately and generally okay and also separate from the guild. And when we were banned from the guild, well, that meant we were also banned from all those businesses. We realized none of us had homes. Street urchin, 2 released convicts, an ancient wizard time man, and a turtle. And though we had a fair bit of gold, no one would take it from us. We couldn't go to any taverns. We couldn't buy any food. No one would trade or barter with us. And we had no place to plan out the future of the Tony Tortellini Gang. We had to settle for the dirtiest, sleaziest inn possible. The room was worth like a single copper piece, but they charged us a silver and they served us trash food. They had a single available room, so we all had to share, Kairos using his monkey transformation power to conserve space. We planned our business strategy in the inn's common room and received constant backtalk from the staff. But we persevered. We were dedicated to this new goal. We realized that no one was going to hire some upstart group when they already had an established guild, which is a fair point on Tails to use against us, I can't lie. We were also calling ourselves a gang, so yeah, pretty fair. Eventually, we found a hooded figure in a sewer or alleyway, or something very sketch, who was willing to hire us. His daughter got kidnapped by some bandits, and wanted them hurt just as much as he wanted his kid back. Not exactly a noble job. It was really suspect in hindsight, but we had just killed a legendary spider, so we were feeling confident. Tony bargained with the guy to pay us something like 250 gold for the job, and also to spread word of the Tony Tortellini Gang Part 2 Battle Tendency. We go to this island where the bandits were sighted, and Tony and Kairos sneakily handle the 2 watchmen guarding this cave, where we assume the rest of the bandits are. We all make jokes about another cave and meeting the boss spider's big sister, who is also a kitsune or something, but we all go in. As we venture deeper, the lack of activity or scenery or set pieces really start to freak us out. We all know Tails isn't happy with us abandoning his whole plot, but none of us think he'd punish us more than just ostracizing us as outcasts, which we all kind of started off as. Still, we're really cautious in starting to plan for a trap. I turn into a monkey and scout ahead, naturally. I explain out of character that I can hide my wings in monkey form to look just like a normal monkey, and I still have my monk abilities as a monkey, which Tails permitted. If I walk into a pitfall, I can just fly. If I spring a trap that shoots arrows or something, I have max dexterity and deflect missiles. And if it's an ambush, I'm a monkey. If I walk into a room with a bunch of bandits ready to attack, they won't attack some random monkey. It might surprise them, but it won't spark a full-on ambush. And if they see the rest of the party behind me and start attacking them, well, they won't expect the monkey to suddenly fly and shoot lasers. It's a pretty good strategy given the situation. Kairos eventually monkeys into this room that's a dead end, with no halls that I can see, and the walls are lined with unlit torches. Yeah, a bad touch. Kairos, still a monkey, tries to walk out of the room and tell the gang who's a little bit behind that there's nothing ahead. Then iron bars drop down and block my path. I stick a monkey paw out and holler and reach for Ezran, who tries to pull me through. I'm still playing the role of a monkey. If any bandits jump out of the shadows, I want to come off as a harmless pet or familiar. Do I have to make some kind of dex save to slip past the bars? No. Can I get through somehow? No. We agreed I'm a tiny creature when I'm in monkey form, right? Yes. As I predicted, it was an ambush. The torches along the walls suddenly spark with demonic green flames, and the bandits appear from a hidden spot. I'm still playing the role of an animal at the moment, and Tails hasn't required any sort of performance check or anything, which is why I was surprised when several bandits ran me through with spears. I was dropped to 0 HP without even transforming back or firing a single laser or anything. By all means, these bandits saw a scared monkey in a cave, and they speared it with multiple spears at once. I started rolling death saves, but it didn't matter. Additional damage from being speared while already downed caused me to die before initiative was rolled. And yes, these bandits speared the monkey even after it was passed out and bleeding. I felt pretty hollow when Kairos died. To this day, it is my only character death, and I had been playing this character for only 3 sessions, so I wasn't very attached to him. Hell, I had to go through the files of my old computer just to find his sheet and remember his name to write this. But I was actually really into the idea of what he might be set up for. I liked the backstory I had for him, and I really liked the race Tails had built for him. Sure, it was broken, but seriously, just have us go to Atlantis or something. And as dumb as that boss spider was, the fact I used my resources and environment to beat him on my own was a really good story, and I planned on using that in future sessions. But there he was, now just a shish kebab monkey. The bandits raised the iron bars, and initiative was rolled. It went very poorly. Somehow, these bandits were worse than the boss spider, because they took out the Tony Tortellini Gang Part 2 battle tendency like it was nothing. Tony, our glorious leader, died. Ezrin, the either all-seeing or very confused or both, died. It wasn't even suspenseful. It was going to be a wipe. When Tony died, his player got up from the table and went to microwave some food as his allies were being slaughtered. He was invested in this idea, this thing we had crafted as players, but he was very not into this. We all just sat there and waited for it to end, for us to be resurrected by James or to be recruited by Miku in the afterlife or something. We got a little excited for a while, as the turtle barely made it out alive, having killed the last bandit. He ran towards the exit, not chancing any reinforcements. Tails described the turtle hearing something like footsteps above him, like in the cave ceiling, and was jumped at the mouth of the cave and done in. As the turtle, the last of the Tony Tortellini Gang, lay dying, the bandit hovered above him and said something. "Make better choices next time." This was the bandit, who none of us had ever met. We later asked if this was like the Adventurers Guild or the Kitsune McGuffin girl's family or something. It wasn't. It was just some independent bandits. And they told all of us to make better choices next time. Tails didn't give us a speech. He didn't complain about us abandoning his story, or try to convince us that these were just the consequences of our actions. He didn't do any of the typical stuff you hear when a Railroady DM has their story abandoned or averted. He just ended the session and told us all to roll new characters. Tony's player was very calm. He said, reclining with his hands on his head, that he wasn't making a new character. He was done playing with Tails. He wasn't going to stop anyone from doing anything. If his roommates still wanted to play with him, they could totally use the dorm just like we've been doing this whole time. But he himself? He was done. Tails calmly left, and we all talked about what just happened. Everyone kind of felt like I did. Sure, this was fun, but we hadn't even started yet, so TPKing wasn't too impactful. For everyone else, this was the third of Tails' games in a row that didn't go as they hoped. Ezrin brought up his past discrepancies with his cleric and made clear just how much he disliked Ezrin being taken by slavers as an afterthought. Tony brought up how little fun he had as the Loxodon monk during the middle chunk of the last campaign and how he said just that. He said from the start, he knew if Tails pulled some nonsense again, he would quit playing his games. And this was the most nonsensical thing Tails had ever done. We all agreed. We were done playing in Tails' games. I still enjoyed the previous campaign, but this bullshit was more than enough to ward me off. To this day, I don't know why he made that boss spider so strong. It all started there. We would have fought the kidnappers if only we had more than 15 HP as a whole. It just kept getting worse from there. The Adventurers Guild didn't need to ban us. We could have just mounted a rescue. Why did the bandits go all ultra-violence on what they thought was just some random wandering monkey? In no way that "make better choices" line wasn't Tails speaking through a poor disguise. I could ask a lot of questions about why Tails did everything he did. but I used this experience to sort of meter myself. I really like storytelling, and no matter how much fun or interesting or even good my story is, I need to remember I can always adapt to what my players do and also how the dice fall. Tails still could have had his story, just with the small deviation of saving Kitsune MacGuffin rather than protecting her. I think 5e is a really good base, but there are a lot of things I want to do that maybe aren't in the books. But I need to keep it reasonable, based on what I throw at my players, and I need to think about how homebrew will be used. Giving a Sun Soul Monk a wild shape, +3 in dex, and +1 to everything else, and also a fly speed is really broken. Put that monk in water or a small room, or let him have his fun for a little while before maybe finding a way to clip his wings. We've established his race is hunted, and his powers should be hidden. Use that, but do not kill him because he's too good. TLDR. DM has a history of railroading and broken homebrew. Flying Laser Monkey kills legendary spider that probably wasn't supposed to be killed, and a gang of criminals doesn't follow the heroic railroad, so DM decides to TPK and start again. PS. If a group of 5 weebs thinks that you're going in on the Fox Girl waifu thing too hard, you might have a problem. Xendeku, thank you so much for sharing your tale. This was a really long story, so I'm just gonna say, we all know it. Railroading, for the most part, is terrible, especially with the fact that he had a bunch of airship DMPCs. It just makes for a terrible experience for everyone. I want to hear from you guys though. What did you think of the story? Be sure to let me know down in the comments below, and if you enjoyed the tale, please hit the like button. That's gonna do it for today, and until next time, hope you feel inspired.